Well, by the grace of God, we are here today. We pushed a bunch of wrong buttons, said a few wrong things, but here we are. And we are here to talk about gardening in the winter time. So before we even say anything else, Batavia, where are you located?
Chicago, Illinois, in the United States of America.
And I am in coastal North Carolina, and we both garden to some extent into the winter season. So this is all about that. I think it's like the holy grail of gardening, accomplishing that year-long garden.
If there's any bit of gardeners that are unrealistic, I think gardening in the winter would be one of the goals of that unrealistic gardener. Not to say that it's not possible, because clearly we do.
Yeah,
But
well, and I mean, we know too. Actually, I'll hold off on that. We'll get into your boyfriend.
oh yeah.
So,
I
which,
love him.
yeah, we'll talk about him for sure. So yeah, this is all about that, and it's really important because if you can even get into a piece of it this year, you can continue that process on throughout the seasons and really extend your gardening season on both sides of the frost dates. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's my hope that once you kind of reach that point going into winter, it makes it a lot easier for you as we're coming out of winter, right? Which again we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah. So, with that in mind, let's do this. Welcome back to the Backyard Gardens podcast, everybody. I am your host, Ben, and I am with my co host, Miss Batavia. If you'd like to support the show, you may do so by becoming a subscriber, Apple, Patreon, whatever you want to do. Come join us on YouTube. Come see us on YouTube. Give us a subscribe. We try to release our weekly videos, and then also we take clips out of each video and release those too. So there's smaller bites for you. So come see us there. And also check our link below for our seeds. We got those. And this show is sponsored by the Planter app, and there is a link below to get you 20% off on the Planter app. So get that. Thank you so much, Peter, for the Planter app. It is a grace. It is just awesome for gardeners. So check that out.
I am logging into next year's garden plans in three, two, one. I
Okay.
actually I had to fight the urge as I was like not even into fall yet, fight the urge to go and try to plan out all of 2026 because what I was doing in my head was like making plans for makeup crops, like things that didn't do well. It's like, oh, I'm gonna plant much more of this, next year. And it's like, no, fight the urge.
Yeah.
That's garden emotions.
Well, I've never done this, but I was thinking about making a winter plan and trying to think about realistically what would make it into winter and through winter in my garden, and how
Oh,
does
I
that
wish we would
look?
have done that before this episode. That would be fun. Make a
Yeah,
note for myself.
that's something just to kind of because it's so visual. And as we go through this, you'll see there's different reasonings why some things would make it and some things wouldn't. But
Hmm.
what's your experience with growing in winter?
So let's see. We're using the calendar start of winter, right?
Um,
Right.
yeah, I mean, we have to use the calendar winter. Well,
What else could you use, right?
well, I mean, I feel like every area in the United States or in the world has their own winter start date.
Yeah.
Like my winter doesn't really start then, but
Yeah, it's that's interesting because you could look at this and everyone in the US has the same start for winter, right?
yeah,
Um I was thinking about if you're looking at it where winter is once you have consistent freezes, but everyone doesn't get consistent freezes, so you can't do that. So this year it's December 21st. It's always right around that time as far as the first day of winter goes. And so for my experience, I have had maybe a couple of carrots, but mostly, leafy greens that are in the garden, including, I believe, lettuce. But we're talking about like if I don't get it out this weekend, that first weekend of winter, then it's not going to make it. So it absolutely is, things that I've planted in the fall, and then some of the things that I've planted going all the way back to the spring. That's been my previous experience. And of course, you have like the garlic that you planted, probably sometime in fall that's, still under the earth. I've never had garlic sprout before the growing year ends, the actual calendar year ends, and that's probably because I'm planting it pretty late in the year always.
Yeah, mine sprouts like right away. It's crazy.
Mhm.
So, for what effort you put into it, do you feel like you're successful at growing into that season?
Oh, that's such an awesome question. Did you frame that up because you know how I normally feel about this time of year? Is that why you
I
framed it that
framed
way?
that up like that for a number of reasons, and all of them included you and your feelings and all that stuff. So
Look at
I
you.
framed it up just like that.
Is it your anniversary coming up? You're I mean, it's clicking on all kinds of cylinders, man. Um, yes. Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. I'm
because
trying to be emotional about it because that I mean, put that on a t-shirt, right? Don't put it on a t-shirt. That'd be a terrible t-shirt. But
it
that's
would be
exactly the
terrible.
lens. Yeah. Exactly the lens that you want to look through based on the effort you put in, what you get out, what you would expect. And every winter, every year that I've approached the garden during the winter, the answer has been yes. Some years I've just put in more, and other years I've not. And the interesting thing, though, is of course I'm not putting the effort in during the winter. It's the work and effort that I've put in way prior to that
Yeah.
that leads to whatever that success or satisfaction is.
I think I think your Bluetooth is trying to connect.
Oh
Maybe
no,
it like clicked in and out. I don't know. It's just the audio
it
got a
could
little
have
bit
that.
weird.
It could be that I have the recorder sitting on top of my keyboard.
Oh, that might have
Yeah.
something to do with it. I mean, the reason why I ask is because there's so many different things that you can do in your garden, and we'll get into some of those. But not everybody is willing to go that extra mile and
Mhm.
do
Mhm.
everything humanly possible to do it. And I think it's important to, as we have this conversation today, that we think about like it's easy. There's definitely like depending on where you are, there should be a limit to what we can do and what we should do for our garden. You can always, I don't care where you are, you can find a way to grow into the wintertime for the most part. And we've seen that too. So to bring up Batavia's quote unquote boyfriend,
Mhm.
so what's his channel name? OYG Frugal?
It's OYR, 1 Yard Revolution, frugal gardening. He hasn't put out videos in like 6 years, but I still love him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're listening or you're out there. I hope you're okay. I will tell you that
Patrick is his name.
watching him and what he did in his garden
Mhm.
was where I got most of my ideas to
Mhm.
start, because I was able to see like this guy's got it's freezing and
Mhm. Mhm.
he's harvesting food all winter.
Yeah.
But he put in the effort to do it. So,
Mhm.
is he happy with what well, I think he is happy with it because he's making videos of it. I don't know where he is now, but check it out if you want to get ideas, because that's where a lot of this draws from. And I mean, it's important too because you see it and it's a realistic view and of your expectations of what you're going to see in your garden in the harshness of winter. And arguably so, Chicago winters are pretty damn harsh, are they not?
Yeah, for sure. I think that we talk about, watch with caution when you're watching someone's garden that's in a different area. The reason why I loved his garden videos is one, it's in a like area, but even if I was in a bit of a warmer place, you kind of can see the extremeness of it. right? If I felt like I had the carpentry skills to do it, I would do what he did, right? And it was a lot of work. It's everything from, he's basically growing in an unheated hoop house.
Yeah.
Um, Not necessarily, I wouldn't describe it as a greenhouse necessarily. It's not low tunnels. It's definitely a structure. And so he has a whole setup where he's removing kind of that additional material that he's adding in the spring, going into, coming out of winter, going into spring. You have to have a method to where you're going to store that. Like, it is an operation, but from what I can tell by following him, I don't know him personally, like, it met the desire of he and his wife, right? When it came to having food continue to be available to them from their garden. That's a really good way to describe it versus growing in the winter necessarily. He definitely was doing a lot of harvesting and being realistic when it came to he wasn't harvesting every day, from what I could gather, every day during the winter, and that's okay too.
Well, that's the
Um,
story for me.
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
not
mhm.
harvesting every day in winter either. And I'm in North Carolina, so our winter is totally different. But being able to see somebody do that, and I mean,
Yeah.
he had like a double layer. His hoop house, if I'm not mistaken, was a double layer. And
Mhm.
then on
With
top of that,
plastic.
he would have frost blankets on the inside on really cold nights. And he would come out and pull those frost blankets up, and you're like, I mean, there's beds of kale, And I
Mhm,
mean,
mhm.
it wasn't like he had this crazy
Variety.
variety, but he had food growing.
There's what do you call them where you have like the glass tops, cold frames. So he had basically cold frames on top of beds, or beds, covered with a cold frame. So you have that insulation. Then he had two covers of at least two covers of plastic. So that was one structure. And then he had some structures outside that were probably closer to what you and I would do in our garden space, where you're using plastic and it's just generally over low tunnels, over the PVC pipe hoops. And he, shared in videos. And if you hadn't known already, you'd, figure it out pretty quickly when it came to like temperatures that you want to uncover things at. You want it to be at certain temperatures. You don't want to harvest food when, the plants are still limp, yada, yada, yada. But I think one of the great exercises, applying it to winter, but also being realistic in the other garden seasons, is how much you should be expecting. And I'm not talking about a finite number, but his winter garden, your winter garden, my winter garden is going to produce less than my summer garden. Like, just hard stop. And that's okay. So I mean, I think that that's, even what you're eating in the winter, when you start to think about it. That's why I said we've done some of the work we've done during the spring and summer and fall to have vegetables that we can enjoy
To
in the
break up the
winter.
monotony,
Yeah,
because it
that wouldn't
does get
necessarily grow then.
yeah, because it gets monotonous in the wintertime. I mean,
Mhm,
it's the
mhm.
same thing day in and day out.
Yeah.
And I mean, so seeing that was a big change, game changer for me, because I'm like, if that dude can do it and it's below zero,
Yeah.
then I can do it when it's 20. 18
Mhm.
degrees is usually about as cold as we get over the winter. Like, I can make it happen. And when we did that, everything started to change. And the whole
Mhm.
conversation changed around here at our house about growing, because before that, the last frost came and I was done. Or the first frost, excuse me. I was done. I was pulling it all up. It was over. And I would sit there and I would let things grow or go until April of the next year, right? And what that allowed me to do, seeing that, is from November to April, I really had nothing in my garden. And now basically I have something in my garden year round, but I am actively, like, seriously growing from, in February, things are getting planted out. So I shave 2 months off of my downtime. And even then, I'm still harvesting other stuff and growing other stuff in the garden. It just had to unlock in my head that, like, this isn't the end. This is just a change. And that's something that really just, it changed for me completely. And
And
not getting huge baskets full of of harvest was something that I had to digest,
Yeah.
but it works.
Yeah, I think so. I think that I was making lunch today and I was thinking about because I'm at the point now, and shout out to I think Tanisha from the last episode. I think our timing is right. I actually went back to read the question or the comment that she had shared, and it's like as I was preparing my lunch today, I was, going through my cucumbers because I'm still, as of the recording of this, I still have cucumbers in my garden. And it's like, well, geez, I wonder if I could fine tune the garden where I have more plants that don't require my immediate attention. Like they don't deteriorate as soon as some of the plants I do have in my garden. You know, cucumbers that are, homegrown are going to last less on the counter, less time than something from a store. And I shouldn't say on the counter, even in, if you put them in the crisper. Um, and so I kind of counter that with what are the things, and I'm not going to go through this list now. What are the things in my garden that will wait for me? Right. And am I growing enough of those? So when you go back to your winter bit, you look at it and say, all right, you get to be more in tune with the things that want to survive during that time, right? That are much more comfortable even as that weather cools off. Now you are kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit because you are taking these steps to expand that time, right? A head of lettuce isn't going to just be fine with no cover, at 15 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to need to do something,
Yeah.
to protect that.
Well, and that's where the effort comes in. So,
Hmm.
I believe this is the point in the show where we get into the efforts to put into it. I've done a number of things over the years, and a lot of them are variations of something.
Hmm.
And just so everybody knows, I have an off-grid greenhouse that is not have any electricity in it, but we heat it kind of as much as we can with no electricity, and we grow in it in the winter, only in the winter, and into the spring. And then also our garden beds, they all grow to some extent in the winter as much as we want them to grow. So, and we get freezing temperatures. Our first frost date is surprisingly enough is not far off from Batavia's, but it's a different beast because we can get more heat and less cold, and it's the opposite for her. Basically, it's doomsday from that point on.
Yeah.
So it's just totally different. But even still, keep in mind as we talk about these methods, OYR Frugal was able to do it in sub-zero temperatures. So
Yeah, the chain, it's OYR, frugal and sustainable organic. It's a long name. He's one of those OGs when it was like,
yeah,
we're not going to be that catchy.
we should
So
send it
you
to Leonard, and hopefully we can get the link in the show notes.
yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. So
Um, so I was thinking about this year. Remember, it was on this show where I had the realization. Um, it's probably been close to almost 10 years that I've wanted to grow in all seasons. And I'm going to use grow and have things in the garden that are kind of dormant. Like I'm using those interchangeably right now. But it's been probably close to 10 years. So, 3 of those years I spent thinking about it.
yeah,
So you say for the last 7 years or so, I've been kind of actively believing that I'm doing things to lead me there. And it's interesting because it was on this show that I had the revelation about how dark one area of my garden is,
yeah,
versus another. And even knowing that this year, so the last probably handful of years, 2 or 3 years, I've been wanting to plant for fall in the front yard because that's the sunniest space in the garden, like hard stop. And I have worked at it. And this year, I've not quite got exactly where I wanted to be, but I'm about halfway there. And I planted in one of the spaces that is probably the shadiest spot as well. Now, fortunately, the plants are going to get some size on them. So that ends up doing is I'll cover that space if they get enough size on them, and if I don't harvest everything from the plants in the backyard with plastic, but it's with plastic, and this is regular. I think it was 6 millimeter, but it's not greenhouse plastic.
Yeah.
So I'm just using plastic I got from my home improvement store, and I have the hoops already in place, but I'm not going to have the benefit of that particular bed getting sunny like I would if it was like literally one bed, one set of beds over, right?
Right.
So that's one of those things where, again, a lot of effort for our buddy that's also in Illinois, OYR did, but obviously he worked through those things and said, I'm planting in this space because this gives me the best chance. And the sun matters not because it's going to continue to grow in the winter, but that whole thaw, unthaw, you know, plants are limp, plants perk back up. The more sun that I get on an area that I'm planting in, the more likely I'm going to be able to harvest,
Yeah.
right?
I was just looking up the cost of greenhouse plastic, so
Hmm.
I think I might be getting some.
Oh, send me the link. Drop the link in the chat.
Yeah, I will. The reason why is because greenhouse plastic is UV stable ish,
Mm-hmm.
so it doesn't break down as fast. And I mean, I got to be honest. I don't really like putting plastic over my plants. You know, the whole microplastics thing is a real issue. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really know a whole lot about it, but what I do know is if 1% of what they say is true about it, it's pretty bad. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, like, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Like, this is part of what we're doing. The only other thing I can say is you just grow like hell all summer and you just make it happen. You know what I mean? But
That's a part of a larger conversation about how pure we are as gardeners.
well, you
You
can be as
know,
pure as you want to be, and I think in my head I'm more pure than I really am.
well,
It's like my
story of my
buddy.
life.
My buddy used to say he's a legend in his own mind.
Mhm.
But low tunnels, they're great. They are
Mhm.
easy. They keep the frost off. The important part about low tunnels, what they do is they actually minimize the temperature swings in your bed if you manage the cover correctly, meaning you vent it and stuff like that. So it keeps a little bit warmer at night, but in the daytime it gets it warmer a lot faster, so it gets that recovery time. And that was really important for that guy. On we're just gonna call him because his name's so on the Frugal channel. That was really important, and that was a big thing
Mhm.
for him, is because his structure was basically sealed up all winter.
Yeah.
So he would get those periods where those cells in those plants could release the water and basically fix themselves, and then he could
Perk
go out
back
and
up. Yeah.
harvest. Yeah. So, and it's not all plants will do that,
No.
but
No. No.
the certain plants will. And I mean, we've said them 1,000 times on here. So if you need to know what plants are, you can go back to another episode, something like that.
Yeah. And I'm
Um,
sure there was a level of, research they did and trial and error,
oh
when it
yeah,
came to, even when you think about temperatures, again, there are going to be different temperatures from different spots in my garden,
yeah,
right?
absolutely,
And so in the unheated hoop house, he had um, a kind of thermometer in there to gauge the temperature outside versus the temperature inside. And I look at it and say, I mean, it's a way to have a little bit of fun. It's a way to, get outside. For me, my 9 to 5 is remote. So I've told you this before. I have some neighbors, and God bless them, they will send SOSs like checking on me during the winter, because now, and going back to 2019, I don't need to go and get the train to go downtown to go to work.
yeah,
So with that in mind, there could be days where I don't leave the house,
yeah,
and so it is nice to also have this additional need to go out and check on things. I've tried it over and over, and I'll try it again this winter. I used to have a customer that, where were they at? Um, I feel like they were in Massachusetts. Um, and they would, um, I think this is my neighbor coming and get a package. I'll send her a message. They would, her and her neighbor will walk out and sit on their benches or their chairs every day and have like a cup of coffee just to be able to get out, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's important too. Where were you going with that though?
A call and we'll drop it off when I'm done.
So now
Um,
you're telling everybody your message.
yeah, that's fine. So where I was headed with it was having this garden outside that you may need to vent, even if it's a single bed, you know, a space that you're checking on. It's a way to get you back outside into the garden where
Yeah.
normally if you weren't growing in winter, you wouldn't, right? You know.
Well, that's the thing too, and I mean, you said it's a fun thing to do, and while yeah, it's fun, but yeah, but within the first season, you're gonna figure it out quick. Especially if you go into it with a measured approach, and you plant the right things. You could start to get an idea of what's going to be coming up and get them in the ground, and that is really going to help you with managing everything. And if you set up thermometers like he did, you're going to figure out trends in no time. What you're going to figure out is inside of that structure, what's the temperature difference? And so every night you're like, hey, it's going to be 3 degrees warmer. And then every night you can look at it and say, okay, it's going to be 21 degrees. Well, it's going to be 24 degrees in there. You could do that simple math, and it doesn't really take a whole lot. The thing to remember is cloudy days really kind of screw it up to an extent, but that gentleman, I mean, he had multiple layer system going on, and I mean, he was going to the extreme. I think it's safe to say that's an extreme effort.
Yeah.
We have a listener of the show who's in Canada, and I don't know if he's still listening. I believe his name is Patrick, actually. Hi, Patrick. He set up
Hey,
something.
Patrick. I actually was thinking of him, but I was like, I haven't heard us talk about him in a while. I wonder if he does listen.
Yeah.
Because he has that, it's like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so he had built a structure too that was air injected in the between the two layers for insulation, and he had a wood stove in there. Now, I mean, we're talking. I had access to a smart weather station at one point, and I believe it was like -10, -15 degrees, and he had everything growing, and I mean, but he put the effort into it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wasn't something that was just like, oh, well, we'll see what happens. And I think that's when you come into like these extreme seasons like that. And if you go on the other side of it, like the people in the southwest that grow in the deserts and stuff, the people who build the appropriate shade structures and put the time and effort into it, they are way more successful. And it's after that initial project is done, it's a lot easier.
I came across someone on YouTube and he was growing in Arizona, but he had dug out, I don't know the proper name for it, but he had dug out like a tunnel. I don't know if you call it a tunnel. He basically was growing under the ground, right? And noting how much cooler it was once you get to a certain level. I mean, he had to have been 10 feet deep or more.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and once you get to a certain level, temperatures aren't, you're not dealing with 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it begs the question, and this is for the listeners, we're not going to grow tomatoes. We're not going to grow cucumbers. We're not going to grow zucchini, putting those kinds of crops aside. 4 crops for winter. What would you grow? If you think about our buddy over at OYR Frugal Gardening and knowing that you could have a setup that would allow you to grow it. I actually don't know that I need a whole lot for the winter.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in some kind of extreme situation like that, you kind of are stuck with what options you have. You know what I mean? There's no really bending anything. I mean,
Well, no, think about his garden as an example, right?
I don't remember anything. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I just remember seeing a lot of kale. And it makes sense that there would be kale in there.
Yeah. So as an example, I wouldn't bother with growing like broccoli just for the idea of what it would produce. I probably, if I had to choose, I probably would focus on your spinach, your lettuce,
Anything
true
cut and
lettuce.
come again.
Yeah, and probably something more like your kale and different varieties of kale. I don't know that I would do even collards, believe it or not. Again, if I had to limit myself, and only because of the multiple applications the other things have. The
Yeah.
more I would more commonly eat the other things. It probably would be great to have cabbage, but I don't know how cabbage would fare with the again thawing, freezing, giving the head.
It doesn't fare well, I can tell you that.
Yeah, yeah. So that goes back to earlier in the episode when we were talking about you're going to get less. You're not going to have baskets and baskets and baskets, So that's okay. Get used to that. Now we're looking at. I remember one of the first. Gosh, I still hope it's on your Instagram under Sandy Bottom Homestead. There's a picture of you with a basket with like turnips, maybe carrots in it, and it was the first like maybe January or something. And it was the beginning of like he's doing it. This is
Yeah.
me saying it myself as I'm watching you. Like the first person that I knew personally that had vegetables at the earliest point in the year.
So that must have been in the beginning part of our relationship,
Oh.
which that
Is
was
this going to turn into story time?
no. Well, no, 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 no.
Okay. All right.
I'm not gonna make you cry on this episode.
No, it's okay.
The reason why I brought that up is because, if I'm mistaken, it's probably 5 years ago, roughly.
I'll find it. I think it was more like 21.
So
Beginning of
4 years ago.
21.
So that was
Yeah.
probably, I believe it was like 20 when I started really pushing growing in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that picture itself was one of the times when I really realized that, like, hey, this is possible. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm harvesting this stuff. This is something that can be done and should be done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like it's super easy all the time. But one of the things that I've done in my low tunnels is just, and I'm really big on passive heating. So what passive heating is basically you stick something like a water container in, and OIR Frugal did this. He had a lot of them. I want to say he had 55-gallon drums stacked up on top of each other.
Those and he
Those
painted them
black
black
drums, and
too,
he
right?
painted them black. And I have two in my greenhouse. I have two 15 or 20-gallon drums in there, and it keeps the temperature about 4 to 5 degrees warmer at night. So with just that alone, he was able to keep up the temperature a lot more. And so that's a totally off-grid way to do it. You fill it up with water, you put it in. And somebody actually on my YouTube channel the other day said something about maybe adding some rock salt into the water to help with that. So I might try to do that too, just to see if it helps bring up the heat a little bit more. I'm not sure, and truth be told, rock salt's not very easy to get here. We don't
Yeah.
get snow or ice or anything like that often enough to sell it in the store. But another thing that I've done, and so in my low tunnels, I've used a 5-gallon bucket, and that would release the heat at night. And it did. I did a test, and it kept it about 2 degrees warmer than it was previously. So that was right around 3 degrees warmer in there. So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of truly it's a winter time, and I can't remember. I'll come across when I see it, I know it, but you got multiple pictures, dude, of you like turnips and
Yeah.
lettuce and things in the winter.
Well, that's when I'm
Um,
most active on Instagram.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't do
Is it-
anything in the summertime because everybody else is. And I get
well,
bored. So then I start to, we take a break off the show and I start doing stuff, and I'm
mhm.
just like, yeah, let me post.
Yeah, there's 1 year I took, and if we didn't have trouble with being in Jerry, um, as in mice, in the garage, I would do this
Tom and
again this
Jerry.
year.
Tom
Tom and
and
Jerry, yeah,
that you
that's
I
it.
thought you were talking about ice cream.
Yeah, no, no, Tom and Jerry, or just Jerry. So, I had a mouse sighting, and I've not been back in the garage since. So, for
You
those
got to
that
get rid of the
know,
mouse.
no, hmm?
You got to get rid of the mouse.
No, he could have it. That's it.
Nah, bro, come on.
No, no, I'm taking some steps. Yeah. So, 1 year I took grow lights and some of the containers that I would have planted in, I put them under grow lights in the garage. Of course, the garage is not heated. Not of course, but it's not heated, which means it's not that much warmer, but you don't have the elements, the wind blowing, you don't have snow, right?
Frost.
Yeah, you don't have frost, right? Well, you could have, still have, things could still freeze over, of course. Um, and I kept things alive a little bit longer, but this is just when discipline sets in. It wasn't coming into the season my plan. It was like, oh, I still have some containers with some stuff. Let me put them in there.
Yeah.
So some of the things weren't the most ideal size. Some of them were a little bit too tall for the lights. But I mean, obviously there are people, and you've done this before when it comes to, this is probably when those, kind of poly, what is it? What's the material that's kind of, it's not plastic, but the greenhouses, the green ones.
That's plastic. Poly.
Yeah. So where those would, I've seen people use things like that indoors to grow. Um, and that's an opportunity if you wanted to use some space indoors, like even if it is an unheated garage,
Yeah.
as long as you're providing a light source. Um, a lot of things will grow just fine. And you already know that from when you're starting your seeds in the spring, and you can see how big some plants can get. Again, cool weather plants, and I'm not talking about a tomato plant. Um, there are a bunch of different options, and it isn't necessarily to say go out and do all of those things now, but start thinking about what your tolerance is, what your desire is to grow, and how much more. Do you just want spinach,
Yeah.
during the winter?
Well, and I mean, you start one bed and you go from there. I mean, we had like two
Hmm.
beds covered at one point, and now I think we're up to all of them. If not, we will be this year. I will make covers for all of them and be prepared for it.
Hmm.
There is a little bit of a financial burden when you start getting multiple beds in
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
So another thing that I did too is just kind of like I said earlier on, we're just kind of building onto one idea. I took a passive solar system, and I did this in New England. So I lived in Plymouth, Massachusetts for a number of years, and I had it wasn't I didn't make the low tunnel. It was like one of those cheap greenhouses that were made to go over garden beds.
Hmm.
It only
Hmm.
lasted one season, so there's that. But I put it in there, and I put a bucket in there, and then in that bucket I put an aquarium heater. And I've said this on the
Hmm.
show years ago, but I just set that aquarium heater on like the lowest temperature, and it kept that bucket warm and radiated it out, and I was able to grow radishes up until like February in Massachusetts. And everybody knows how cold it gets up there. So, they had the January thaw about mid-January, which really helped.
Hmm.
But after that, that was all short. And the only reason why I didn't grow them anymore is because I ran out. Because the one thing to remember is during that time frame, you can't really plant anything. You
Yeah.
kind of got to already have it growing.
Yeah. For us, um, you're also trying to keep that soil, when it comes to, if you come back over to Chicago, that soil from freezing as
Hmm.
well, right?
And that was the
So.
case in this is the soil never froze.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Yeah.
humidity was outrageous in it. So there
Yeah,
was
I
that.
mean, yeah, by design with the the heater. The December as a whole. So again, the 21st is the first day of winter. I mean, for sure in Chicago, this last handful of years, my soil is not frozen until we get into your Januaries and your February. So
How
that's
far
doing
into
nothing.
January do you think?
I'd say maybe starting like the second week of January. So probably about mid January,
So you're
it's more
talking about
difficult.
3 to 4 weeks after the technical beginning of
Hmm.
winter
Hmm.
that you could
Yeah.
have something growing in there with fair ease.
I planted my garlic on December 31st last year. And I wasn't like chipping away at soil. It was still absolutely pliable. Did I check every single garden bed? No. There may have been a shadier spot that maybe had some corners that were, remember last year we didn't get our first frost until like mid-November.
Yeah.
So it takes a quite a bit of continued cold temperatures for your soil to freeze. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think a part of you talk about those layers that our buddy OYR did. A part of that is not only to protect the plant as far as what's above ground, it's trying to make sure that the ground is actually still workable, if you will. And again,
Yeah,
he's not planting anything in there. And if I'm not mistaken, they were all raised beds that he was growing in. Because I bring it
probably.
up because I've done containers where I've just moved a container that already has something growing inside of a raised bed, additional insulation, and then put a cover on top of that. Now, that only lasted so long because, again, remember, neighbors have to check on me. Once it gets to a certain temperature, I'm not going out there unless I have to,
Yeah,
you know? But again, that's that additional because your raised beds are going to have more protection than your containers are, especially if you're growing actually any kind of container material you grow in. And that's the reason why I put it inside of the raised bed, but also it made it easy for me to provide some cover. I don't necessarily recommend that if you're only growing in containers, then you have to figure out how do you actually provide that level of protection for those containers.
yeah. And what does that protection look like other than what you did? Anything else you could do?
No, I mean, I think I've one year I had a frame of a raised bed, no soil inside of it. So again, I just created because I was going to fill the bed, just hadn't gotten to it. You could put insulation as it relates to like you have to have something to hold the thing in. Like if you had a lot of shredded leaves, that provides some additional protection around
Yeah,
those containers. You can obviously put hoops inside of containers, but as soon as you start to have air gaps, you lose the value that you're trying to gain. Right,
yeah.
you're losing that protection as soon as you have air kind of whipping inside of that. So you want to make sure that it's pretty snug as
Y-
far as that connection from the plastic or whatever other material. I mean, obviously they're frost blankets, which are different than plastic, right?
Yeah, I
That are
don't.
designed to give you 4 or 5 degrees, depending on
I've never done
how
frost
big.
blankets. I don't know.
I have
Um,
some here.
are you? And what is your take on it?
I'll let you know next spring. I've literally used them during the growing season and not in the winter,
Okay.
if that makes sense. I bought them for the purpose of it. They were thin enough to not cause a problem and overheat my plants going from spring to summer. But I've not used them for the intended purpose of, oh, I'm protecting these plants and it's, 32 degrees outside, but it really feels like it's 36 degrees underneath them. But everything I've seen, everything I've read, it feels like it does the job for those plants. One thing to note though, my hoops are pretty high, and if you just take a step back and think about this, you want the space between your plants and the top of whatever cover you're using to be as small as possible,
Yeah.
right? The more space you have in between, the more opportunity for that air to be in it, and that air you're trying to keep warm.
Yeah.
The
Volume.
big quotations was they weren't on air, it was to keep warm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the volume in there that you are
Mhm.
concerned about. And I mean, one of the reasons why I think that that garden bed in Massachusetts did so well is because it was so humid in there. Because water
Mhm.
retains heat.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you can also use milk jugs. I came across a a video many years ago. I don't have no clue where it was, but it was a gardener in Colorado who had a
Okay, yeah.
greenhouse, and his whole wall of his greenhouse was milk jugs painted black, and he was right through winter he'd grow in it, to some extent. Now, I mean, it was a lot. Don't get me wrong, and there was not a lot of space in there, but he made it work. But if you just take that and just,
Mhm.
let's say you get 4 milk jugs and you space them out evenly in an 8 foot bed, then that's going to disperse a little bit of heat naturally throughout the night and then reheat during the day. So it's a cycle, and I'm really big on trapping the heat instead of creating the heat.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
with creating the heat comes energy cost, effort. I mean, for me to run power out, if I would have ran power out to my garden many years ago, it wouldn't be a big deal. But now it's like I've kind of built everything up to where I don't need it
Yeah.
anymore, And it's like I'm not interested in growing tomatoes this time of year. I'm interested in just what's the easiest thing to do. And that's
Yeah,
what
for
it
me and
is.
tomatoes, it would be I'd be living somewhere else. And the buckets of water and the milk jugs work for as long as those things aren't frozen solid, you know.
Well, the thing is, with the cover, you have to remember those covers, it can be 40 degrees outside during the daytime, 30 degrees, but it'll be 60, 70 degrees in those covers. So they will warm back up. And he said that they didn't really ever freeze. There was enough of them that created, and like the OYR guy, I don't think his ever froze either. And I've never, and we had a period, and I know everybody's gonna be like, oh, that's not wintertime. But for us, we had 7 degrees, from 7 to 15 degrees for like 4 nights, and it never got above 30 degrees, and none of that stuff froze at all. So
Never got below 30 degrees?
never got above 30 degrees
Oh.
during that time frame. So if there was a time for now, if it would have been cloudy, we may be having a different story here, but it was not cloudy at the time. And typically speaking, when you have really cold weather in the winter, there's a clear sky because the clouds are not insulating where you are. So that typically, you have sun. But if you don't believe me, go outside on the coldest night and look up. You'll see the most stars you've ever seen. So we never had it free, and I haven't heard of anybody else having them freeze, but milk jugs would be more susceptible just because it's a less volume of water. And getting milk jugs is a kind of a pain. I don't drink milk, so.
Yeah, I've had over the years neighbors gift me because I've said, "Hey," but that was for my winter sewing project, which I still haven't really taken off on.
Are you going to do that this year?
I don't know.
Yeah.
If I don't figure out the brassica thing, I'm gonna have to. And I haven't figured out the brassica thing.
So the other thing to remember during all of this discussion, even if you're not growing into the winter, you're still going to be planting in the winter. So by the date on the calendar, you will have most of your gardens should be planted completely with cool season crops well before the calendar first day of spring. So
March 20th, 2026.
Is that March 20th? Okay,
First
so
day of spring.
so most people will be sometime in like early March starting to put stuff out. So you're still going to be able to use all of this to your advantage. And then if you go on the other side of it and say, well, okay, we passed the first day of spring, it still feels like winter.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like spring at all. So you're still growing in winter, as a gardener would put it. So all of these techniques and stuff, it works, but you got to get in the right mindset.
What I have found, even in cases where I've had plants that have been covered that didn't take, because I've covered beds before and the plants never took off. They weren't at maturity when I covered them.
Yeah.
They never took off, but I left the beds covered. As you would expect, those were the beds that thawed first as well.
Yes.
Right. And so that's a benefit coming into the spring. And not in a situation where they were thawed and I had to worry about them freezing up again. Now, by the time you can get, your spade down into the soil, you're ready. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that soil isn't going to freeze completely again. At least that's my experience here in Chicago.
Yeah, the only thing about leaving them covered with nothing in is I really like to get the rains and the weather and stuff to hit my garden.
You missed that. And now again, they are frozen underneath there, so you don't so much have to worry about the, um, you know, the pests not dying off
Yeah.
because you do want to consider that, but you don't have to worry about things being too wet. That's something that I always think about doing for my containers. My containers are always sopping wet. So I leave all of my containers out. There are none that in previous years, at least, that I've pulled or really covered in any way. And I'm always kind of working up the soil because it's just too damp to plant in. It'll ultimately end up drying enough to be, ideal to plant in, but that'd be like May or June or something if I waited.
Yeah. So now that we've had this conversation, Batavia, would you do anything different for winter this year? Are you going to do anything different?
No, I don't think so.
No? You're comfortable with what you're doing?
Well, I don't. Maybe I haven't really figured out. what I'm going to do. I'm still at the point in my fall garden where I'm trying to figure out how much growth I'm going to have once we kind of cross in from November into December.
Yeah.
So that's going to dictate what my efforts are, So how much of the garden is going to be left for me to try to save, you know? Some of the things I planted, as I've shared, depending on how this winter comes in, I may be able to enjoy without doing anything. If I have, let's say, 3 plants that are living, I'm not going to go through a lot of effort to cover those plants
Yeah.
and vent that area, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and I went through that the first couple years when I started making the transition over is, trying to keep 1 or 2 plants alive. And that's one reason why I started just planting the whole bed.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it's just really not worth it at this point for
Mhm.
me to go out here and mess with it. So I'm like, look, if I don't have a full bed or a decent amount in there, like, I'm just going to let it go, call it good, be realistic about what I'm expecting from it, and just say, hey, I'll just let this bed rest now. And that's okay to do as well. Because, especially for me, that's something that I really think I need. And I'm trying to incorporate more of this year is resting my bed. That's something that I have to do more often. So,
Yeah. I do have a special treat that I want to share.
please.
So this is from a few episodes back, and I'm embarrassed to say after that episode, I went and got these props, and they've been next to my podcast chair since then. So a couple episodes we were talking about onions and scallions. And so these are 2 onions. This is probably the largest onion that I grew this year. And this is a phone for size purposes, right? This is, I don't want to advertise it, but this is a can of soda for
Yeah.
size purposes, right? And then these are, and sorry for those that are listening, but you can come back to this 50-ish minute in the video. These are the,
Scallions.
not scallions.
No.
I can't think of it.
Shallots.
Shallots. Yeah. So here, let me do what all of the big time content creators do. That's
Yeah.
a better view of it,
Yeah.
right? So this is the size scallion. This is a larger size scallion. So again, for comparison purposes, onion, scallion, right? And so the conversation from a couple of weeks ago was because of the variety I chose, which I guess wasn't a variety that was going to get any real size. I ended up getting that nickel size, maybe quarter size scallion compared to a fist size onion, which I'm very satisfied with. Had I known that that was going to be the result, I would have just planted more onions. They are definitely a different flavor. Recipes will call for one or not and not the other. And I can taste the difference. The shallots are much more mild, but I use the fire pit beds to plant the shallots in. And more than anything, I had to pay for the seed shallots. Um, I'm okay with small produce, but it's a pain in the butt to try to peel that thing and get it
Yeah.
into a dish. So it's when you talk about realistic expectations. I meant to bring this in on the next episode, but I forgot about it. Although it was sitting here because now it's just a part of my furniture.
So
Um,
what you're really saying is your podcast area smells like onions.
Now, man, these things are completely cured. You
Uh,
can't smell them.
Look at her tearing up, everybody.
I,
Look at her.
wait, I
Look.
probably wait.
There it
That's
is.
a
I got tears
thumbnail.
going
Hold
down
on,
her.
that's a thumbnail.
Oh. All right, everybody. Grow in wintertime and enjoy it. Come support us when you can. Thank you, Batavia, for bringing in your show and tell today. That was very fun. I'll have to think
I
of
know. I
something.
felt like I had talked about it with my parents, and then they were like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I go up to the front of the class, and the kids are like,
Yeah,
"That's it."
that's it. We know what a shallot looks like. All right, everybody. Remember, on this channel, we do 2 things. Or on this show, we learn to grow, and we grow for change.
See ya.